Ever since I started this YouTube channel back in January, I've been wanting to make a video to go back to the beginnings of my garden, to kind of share the story of my first year of gardening, giving my beginnings, not just for my audience, but for myself, to be able to look back on this as kind of a historical record. My first year of gardening, the things I've done, things I've learned, and the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So my first year of gardening, had no idea I would ever start a YouTube channel. So it was mostly text chats. There was a family garden chat that I did, and slowly adding people to that and sharing pictures of the garden. Just a little, quick caption of what I was doing that day, what I harvested, what I was growing. I had applied in an office community garden, and I was learning a lot there. It was a situation where I couldn't really take a lot of pictures, so I've only got a couple that I can share, but you'll see those in just a moment. But through all of this, I learned that I definitely want to do more gardening, more farming, to be more involved with agriculture, to start my evergreen growth journey, to learn all the things I need to do to be a farmer. I'm not gonna start out knowing everything. I have a lot to learn. I'm not gonna be an expert on any of this. So over the first year, like I said, I took a lot of pictures. I shared that with family over just text chat on the phone. And whenever I added somebody new, I would feel like I'd lost all the history of it. I'd have to start over. So I tended not to add new people to it. So with the YouTube channel, now I can share everything. I can, record what I'm doing. I can make video. I can learn to edit the video. I can tell the story of my first year of gardening. So that's the goal of this video, is to share that with anyone who wants to watch it, or to at least record it for myself so that I can watch it years from now when I have a successful farm in South Carolina. That's the plan. A long way to get there, but counting down the days and trying to make every day count along the way. So I invite you to watch this video of my first year of gardening. I'll share the things I've learned, the foods I cooked, the animals I encountered, the evolution of this garden from just a backyard with nothing but grass and a couple of raised beds along the fence line to what you see now. This is going in my second year of gardening. I'm trying to go vertical as much as I can, trying to grow as much as I can, different types of things, and just making the most of the space I have here to learn as much as I can to prepare to become a farmer in the next less than 3 years. It's going quickly. Sit back, enjoy some coffee, and enjoy this video of my first year of gardening. I worked at this office building for about 2 years. The first year I walked by this community garden every day on the way in and out of work. And then the second year I decided to ask them about getting a plot in there. You can see I've got a nice plot there. I had to pull all the weeds because it'd kind of fallen into disrepair. And by June, I had a pretty nice garden in there. It was really nice coordinating with the other people that had their plots and learning from them. So I took those lessons and brought that home to my garden. This is where I started. I just had a couple of raised beds, 5 raised beds along the fence line. We had done some gardening back during the COVID pandemic. My daughter wanted to grow some things, so we did that for a little bit, but it didn't really go too far. So you can see here, I had bigger plans. So I decided I wanted to build a 20 by 30 foot garden. So I had to build a fence. So I went and got some lumber, got some chicken wire, got some hinges and a latch for the fence. Came up with a design and started building. Dug some holes so that it would be fairly sturdy. Measured out everything where I thought I wanted to put my new beds. And you can see it started going up piece by piece. As I framed it out, I was thinking, this is a lot. Maybe I'm trying a little bit too hard to learn gardening skills. But in the end, it's the perfect size. It's exactly what I needed. So it came together, adding section by section, trying to make it sturdy, and it started to look like a garden, not just a few raised beds along the fence line. I had a section in the center. I had some grow bags that I was wanting to put there. Wasn't sure if I was going to have space for rows in between them. But by that first night, I had my garden fence up. Already had some lights in the raised beds, and it looked really nice. So the next day, I decided to bring the trellises that we had up on our deck there and put them into the garden so that I could do some flowers at the end. I've got some colorful grow bags in there just waiting for some soil to plant something. End of the night, it's looking good. So I had soil delivered. I kind of shopped around, figured out how to get soil, and found a company that could deliver some to our house. We had this little sinkhole in our front yard. There's a water line or something that runs through there and it erodes it from underneath. So I had 7 yards of soil delivered, which I didn't even know soil came in yards. But yeah, I had that delivered and I had them put it into that hole because I figured anything extra we could use to, try to fill that hole a little bit. So I got my grow bags set up in the backyard. I started with trying to group them all together like that, but then I realized I wouldn't be able to get to everything. So then I spaced it out, making it to where I had some rows. My son even helped out a little bit. He helped me to fill in some of the soil from the front yard. I was wheeling it back and then he was putting it into the grow bags. Eventually, we got it all filled up. I even moved a couple of planters down there. You can see those along the fence line. So those were additional things that we had on the deck that I thought would fit into the garden. And in the corner is a little angel that we had from my mother-in-law. Yeah, I had a plan. This was the plan. Didn't quite go to plan, but at least I had a plan. Brought a little table there so I could kind of work through things, figure out what was going to go where. You can see I've already got a couple of things planted just to get a start on things. Slow beginnings, but yeah, it was already starting to look a little bit like a garden, especially at night. I decided to use some lights that we had for a little fire pit, and it just made it feel amazing. I strung them up so that it kind of gave it a greenhouse or teepee kind of shape to it, kind of angled it so I had an entrance. And in the front yard where the soil was delivered, I decided to start a chaos garden. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. So back to the garden, you can see this a little bit later and things are growing. I've got some cardboard boxes there. I'm about to add some potato planters there because I was really wanting to grow some potatoes, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do it that year. I got some mulch because the soil that I had in the grow bags was kind of getting dried out. So I decided I needed to start covering my plants with a little bit of that. Yeah, really hot day in June. A lot of hard work went into the garden during the summertime. Okay, yeah, just random shots of the garden, just daytime, nighttime. Had a great view from the top of the stairs going into the backyard, so love taking pictures from that spot. You can see we started making some garden gnomes and painting those. My daughter wanted to go paint some pottery, and I would pick out whatever would make a good thing for the garden. So I've got a few in there, and then by July you can see how much growth I had, especially along that back left corner. Those pumpkins were just growing like crazy, just taking over that corner of the yard. Got some corn growing pretty high, got a lot of things growing. Yeah, and then you can see the beans are really starting to take off. The corn's doing good. Sunflowers are all along the fence line, and they're just shooting up there. They're getting really tall. I didn't do any paths for the first year because I didn't really want to destroy all the grass that was in there. So that would be a project for this year. You can see that front left bed, that one's got flowers. My strawberries are really taking off. I've got some cherry tomatoes. I tried to make a little salad bar, well, a snack bar going into the garden. And that, wow, just all the green. It really took off. I was so impressed with how much grew that first year. So by August, I had a lot of harvest. I had been taking pictures and sending those out. So the reason why this is kind of a slideshow, this was, what I recorded that first year. I didn't do video. I didn't have a YouTube channel yet. So it was really just taking pictures, sharing them with my text chat, with family and coworkers, and just enjoying that experience. By September, you can see the vines and stuff were kind of getting thinned out. Started pulling things out of there. Those marigolds really took off. Still had some tomatoes and strawberries and different things growing by the end of the season. Still got those potato boxes there, ready to harvest those. And then this is January. This was about the time that I had started my YouTube channel. So you can see why I didn't really, my evergreen growth journey wasn't really green. It was white at the time. But it gave me a chance to do some indoor projects and plan some things out. So back to the front yard. Before I started the garden in the backyard, I was trying to figure out where I could get a full light area. And I was thinking of a smaller space, you know, I wasn't quite as ambitious yet, so I was kind of measuring off a place I could do it in the front yard. And then my wife told me, yeah, you're not growing corn in our front yard. So I had to find a space in the backyard. But since I was having the soil delivered, I decided that sinkhole would make a great chaos wildflower garden. We had traveled to South Carolina, and at one of the visitor centers there, they had a pack of wildflower seeds, and I thought that would be perfect. So I had some old fire logs in the garage back from when we were doing scouting stuff. Kind of gave that a circle around what was left of the soil, and just put lots and lots of seeds out there and watched to see what would grow. Didn't really thin out the weeds too much, just enjoyed whatever grew. You can see I got lots of flowers there. I didn't really turn these into portrait, just kind of focused on the flowers for you, just because I took them at different ways, portrait and landscape, so it's all in there together. Lots of pretty flowers, and I love that this was right by the road, so every time when I got home from work, or, you know, I could just walk down to the front of the yard, go check the mail, and take a look to see what flowers were out there. Thought it gave us a nice feature for that little sinkhole. And that's beautiful. I mean, weeds and all, that I just loved having all the different flowers out there. It's doing really good this year. I've enjoyed going out there and looking at it this year as well, so that's something I kept up with. Yeah, so many colors and different varieties of plants growing. Oh, those are beautiful. And got used to seeing lots of different pollinators out there as well. You know, different types of butterflies were drawn in. Saw different types of bees and different things in there. It also taught me a lot about different types of weeds. You know, what's considered weeds by gardeners and what's considered flowers. I didn't always agree, because if it produces a flower, in my head, it's not a weed anymore. It's a flower. Yeah, I do the same thing in my backyard garden this year. That's part of the reason why I've got those little bottle planters, so I can just see the flowers and not worry about it making my vegetables not produce as well. But yeah, so many beautiful flowers. I'm so glad I decided to do that chaos wildflower garden. Although I joke, I had it so organized, I don't know if it still counted as chaos, but it definitely produced some beautiful wildflowers. Okay, so this is toward the end of the season. It's already getting late into the fall. Well, getting into fall. Still getting flowers, but, you know, starting to kind of dry out a little bit. But still wonderful to go out there and just look at the flowers. So many colors. It just makes me smile so much just even looking at that. Yeah, that's in one of those spots in between trees, so it doesn't get sun very much. It's kind of getting the sun as it crosses the sky. It's blocked by trees except for when it's directly shining on it. But they were thriving. I didn't realize I took so many pictures of them, but yeah, they're flowers. They kind of draw you in. Okay, so on to the compost bins. I decided to make my own compost. I was gathering leaves and cutting grass and getting all the yard clippings, and I got these compost bins. I got one at first and then realized that it wasn't going to be enough, so I got a second one. We added in all of our kitchen scraps and had a little bin in the kitchen that I would take out there, you know, pretty much daily. And yeah, just kept adding things and producing some compost. I really enjoyed turning it and watching all those brown and green ingredients turning into something that I could use in my garden. And as I was going through the garden, trimming things, I would just collect all those, and at the end of my gardening time, I would just go put it into the compost bin. You can see the pumpkins were taking over the garden there. Yeah, and it was so dark and rich. I love how that turned out. And it also attracted some things too. That's a bunch of sunflowers that I put in there. Yeah, I got a little surprised that day when I went out to the bin. Wasn't expecting that. But yeah, I had this little pitchfork kind of thing that was perfect size. It was like a half size one. It was perfect for turning that on a regular basis. And then I added a lot of coffee to it. We had the K-cup, so I was taking all that out. Okay, on to farming inspirations. This is my sister, and I had an opportunity to go to this collards farm. This was a 100-year-old farm, 5 generations, and this was after one of the funerals in South Carolina. I had breakfast with my sister and was invited to help this catered event where I got to go and visit the original farmhouse. They made Dupree made collards, and it was just, I didn't know I liked collards until that day. Now I love them. So it was great being around that farming family, and it was such an inspiration. This is actually my father-in-law's tractor. My son's excited about getting this one someday. This is a rabbit book that, as I was at one of the funerals, it was an inspiration that I wanted to raise animals. But I'll have to protect them from the foxes that we have. We have foxes and rabbits in our neighborhood, and they kind of alternate each year. These are some of the bunnies that I have found in my yard over time. I've actually named a few just because I see them all the time, and also snakes. Starting the garden, I did find a few snakes in the backyard. This is one I was able to capture and move it to a better location. And then we found some rat snakes that had discovered our yard. This is one in the backyard that kind of surprised me one day. And behind the compost bin, I noticed that there were some toads that kept living back there. And when we went on vacation in Aruba, I was really wanting to go to this bee exhibit, but we didn't make it to that, but we did see goats, which my nieces really wanted to have goats on the property. This is back home, some more video of the rabbits. They would meet me every day when I got home from work. They would be next to the driveway, and they kind of got used to me being there. They didn't ever run away. And besides the big animals, there were also lots of bugs. That was one of the things I was learning about gardening. There were lots of ticks in that community garden at work, and I was the one that was really enjoying getting out there and just pulling all the weeds for the unused plots. So yeah, lots of bug bites. Not sure why I'm showing my legs with all the bug bites so much, but yeah, that's definitely a big part of gardening. If you're out in nature, you're gonna get bit by bugs, so you have to be ready for it. But all bugs aren't bad. There's a lot of pretty ones out there. These aren't the best quality pictures, but you can see the butterflies that visited our butterfly bushes in the front yard. It was beautiful seeing those right outside of my window every day. Well, whenever I had a chance to be home and see them during the day. I was working 4/10s at this point, so at least I had long weekends to enjoy the garden and the wildlife. And it's part of why I lit up the garden, so when I was getting home late, I could go out there after dark and enjoy the garden. I'm fascinated by any bug I find in the garden, so I found these tomato hornworms, which most people consider a pest because they can destroy a tomato plant overnight, but they turn into a hawk moth, which is actually a good nighttime pollinator. You can find them easily by the damage they do, but they also leave behind their droppings, which are pretty identifiable. I had some hummingbirds that would visit the backyard as well, so this is a slowed down version so you can actually see it. And the bugs in the compost bin, just because it's kind of gross and fun to include twice in a video. Enjoy. And then lots of other little bugs, trying to figure out the good and the bad spiders. There's lots of those. Yeah, this is me attempting to turn that hornworm into a moth. I gave it its own little area. It turned into the cocoon. I had it in a nice spot there. It was going through the phases, but then it just kind of disappeared. I never saw the hawk moth, and I never saw where it went. I found a second one. They actually get infested by these braconid wasps. I put that into a jar so that I could watch what happened. And yeah, I saw the little wasp. It was kind of cool. Like I said, lots of pollinators in the backyard. These are some pictures of my marigolds that I collected with the bees that were just kind of swarming around them. I was fascinated by it. I'm looking forward to having bees. I want to do honeybees once I move to South Carolina. And these were just a bunch of husks of cicadas that I found in the yard. Don't know why I collected them. Still have them. You can see that I was collecting flowers on my little Diet Mountain Dew bottles even back then. I had researched that the marigolds would keep away a lot of the ticks, so I started doing those in the office garden where we had a lot of them and just enjoyed them so much. I had them all over my garden at home as well. These are some woolly bears. This is a caterpillar that I've actually included in one of my recent videos where I was doing my little bug hunting kit. These are some I found last year that were in the garden. Just kind of watching them crawl around and yeah, just enjoying all the different bugs that I was finding in the garden. They're all fascinating. And I had some other odd visitors to the garden. You can see this one was perched up on the roof of the house next door, just kind of keeping an eye on my garden for me. And this was a little wasp nest that was on one of the branches in the garden. That brings us to the garden harvest. They started small. This was the first one, just a few beans. And then I started collecting some cucumbers and cherry tomatoes and onions and different things from the garden. Lots of cucumbers over the season. I got some little cantaloupes there. My first ear of corn, actually my only ear of corn. Some of the small personal sized cantaloupes. Those were delicious. I love cutting the centers out of those and just, they were so sweet, just juicy, delicious. Yeah, lots more cucumbers. Got a few carrot greens there. Started getting some pumpkins. Got some sunflowers and strawberries, different types of cherry tomatoes. Had to figure out what to do with all those cucumbers, so I learned how to pickle a little bit. And I got some strawberries. I got a lot of strawberries from the garden. That patch really grew. I was getting pumpkins and cantaloupes and watermelon and all kind of good treats from the garden. I was cutting up the cantaloupes and the watermelon. Great snacks. Learning how to cook pumpkin pies. I made several pumpkin pies that fall. And I found some odd little pumpkins in the garden. This little fellow just seemed made for a scary face. So I gave him a hat and just left him on the counter for a couple of days just to kind of watch him look even more scary day by day. I did my best to collect as many seeds as I could from the things I was growing the first year. Got a lot of sunflower seeds, lots of different varieties. Got different melons and cantaloupes and anything I could collect. I was learning to make pickles, like I said. So, eat my pickles, perfect label. Yeah, my cucumbers really produced that first year. I got so many of them. Yeah, you can see here some beans, some carrots, more tomatoes. Finally, my first harvest of potatoes. I was so excited about that. It was like opening up a Christmas present. Of course, not all of them turned out great. By September, I was getting so much each time I harvested. I love taking these pictures and sharing them with friends and family. And just the natural geometry of a sunflower is just breathtaking. That's amazing. This was one of the best days, sitting out on the deck, eating watermelon and getting the seeds from my sunflowers. I was impressed with how many watermelons I was able to harvest that first year from the garden, and how many seeds I was able to collect and dry so that I could store them for later. The harvest continued all through September. Tomatoes, cantaloupes, all kinds of good food, and lots more sunflowers. This was one of my largest daily harvests of tomatoes. Lots of good cherry tomatoes and some larger ones for sauces. I had lots of beans, carrots, more melons, and I was collecting a lot of greens to try those. And of course, more sunflowers. I was collecting a lot of the seeds, but it was mostly the ones that are more bird seed than sunflower seeds that you eat. I had a couple more large watermelons. They were so delicious and juicy. I collected lots more tomatoes and beans, and even got a few peppers along the way. Another large harvest, and my potatoes. My second round of potatoes were delicious. I was getting large harvest all through October, just so many good foods, even some bok choy in there. Still collecting flowers and melons, beans, tomatoes, greens. So much good food from the garden. It was thriving, and I was loving every bit of it. So many watermelons to eat and other good foods. Toward the end of October, the harvest started to dwindle down a little bit, so I had a nice farewell from all my gnomes. I was still making the most of each harvest, even including marigolds along the way. I gathered the last of the tomatoes, even the ones that weren't fully ripe yet, and any other things the garden produced. So many tomatoes that didn't quite get ripe by the end of the season. This was one of the first dishes I cooked last year, some Korean perilla leaves I got from the community garden at work. Loki was always ready in the kitchen for me to test out cooking anything I harvested. This was my Eat My Pickles, my first round of trying to make my own pickles from the cucumbers. I became quite the foodie, taking pictures of all the things I cooked during the season. Some of my carrots, a salad I tried making from things just from my garden, and a little cheese. This was one of my favorites. Had carrots, strawberries, cherry tomatoes, and just all kinds of greens from the garden. And now we've entered the pumpkin section of my learning to cook from the garden last year. I collected as many pumpkin seeds as I could. I tried cooking those and seasoning them. I did a nice fall seasoning. They were delicious, but I'm not a huge fan of pumpkin seeds, I think. So, pumpkin pie, I'm a huge fan of, so that one naturally was high on my list of things to try last year. This was one of my first attempts, all prepared and ready for the oven. I had pureed the pumpkin after figuring out how to cook the two halves in the oven to get it ready. My first attempt came out a little burnt. I had overfilled it, so some of it ran out and burned. Multiple attempts, same mistakes. Had some pumpkin seeds to eat while I was testing out my cooking skills. I was getting better with each attempt, a little less overfilling and a little less burning over. By the end, I think this one was perfect. So many pumpkin pies. You can see why I made the resolution this year to get in better shape. That first slice of pumpkin pie made from a pumpkin I grew myself was one of the best tastes ever. So delicious. I will not forget that. But it was a lot of pumpkin pies. So mixed it up with some watermelon, some cantaloupe, tried different things. So I wasn't just eating pumpkin pie. I was eating healthy stuff too. I like how this one looks like the pumpkin pie's Pac-Man about to eat a slice. After my first successful attempts with trying to pickle some of the cucumbers, I wanted to try something more challenging. So I got some mason jars and the equipment to do some canning. I sliced up some of the cucumbers and put them in some ice water. I got the pot ready, had it boiling, got my jars ready, and I was hesitant. I wasn't quite sure about this, but I think in the end it turned out pretty good. I was worried the whole time those jars were going to explode. But I got 6 jars of pickles using the recipe that I'd found. I tried including my harvest in all my foods. I had some green beans, zucchini, and carrots in this one. By the end of September, I had so many sunflower seeds, I had to try to figure out how to cook them and season them. So I boiled them, laid them out to let them dry a little bit. Then I found several seasonings to attempt, so lots of variety there. I set up bowls for each to add a little bit of seasoning. I laid them out on the tray with each one labeled and ready to go into the oven. Unfortunately, I overcooked them a little bit. They were still delicious, especially the kettle corn. This meal was delicious. I had cherry tomatoes, green beans, all kind of things from the garden. I had harvested several tomatoes, so I wanted to try making some tomato sauce. I cut them, blanched them, sliced them up into nice little pieces, and let them boil on the stove until they formed a really nice tomato sauce. I bottled that up, and I was ready to find something to cook with it. I was impressed that I'd made a complete jar of tomato sauce, all from things I'd harvested from my garden. So I cooked up some pork chops with panko breading and some spiral noodles to go along with it. It looked delicious and tasted better than I expected. I even had leftovers, so I got to have some the next day with some green beans from the garden. By the end of September, I had 2 more pumpkins ready to become pumpkin pies. I considered making some pumpkin cinnamon rolls, but the recipe seemed a little too complicated for me. I also collected the seeds. I had some extra pumpkin puree left that I stored for later, just in case I came up with other recipes. Here's another supper with some carrots, cherry tomatoes, and other vegetables from the garden. I told you I was so excited about those potatoes. This was my first attempt at French fries made from potatoes I grew. That was one of the best burgers and fries I've ever had. I even had sliced tomatoes and a pickle on the side, all from my garden. I shared my story about collards and what those mean to me earlier in this video. This was my first attempt to make collards from collards that I actually grew in my garden. I wasn't really fully prepared for it. I added in some potato slices. I didn't have any bacon or ham hocks ready, so I used a bouillon cube. Wasn't the best choice. It ended up very salty. But for a first attempt, it wasn't so bad. I ended up putting it over some hamburger meat and making a nice sandwich out of it. That was much better. This meal had carrots, potatoes, green beans, and tomatoes, all from the garden. By late October, there wasn't much harvest from my garden, so we went apple picking at a nice orchard that my wife and daughter had found. This was an interesting apple that looked like it was settled in a bird's nest. With all those apples we brought home, I had to find ways to cook them, so I sliced up some and added in some cinnamon and made some crescent rolls to go with them. I'm not sure if apples are quite as healthy when you cook them up this way, but it tasted great. And another burger and fries meal. Oh, those potatoes were amazing. Look at that burger. Even had tomatoes from the garden. Here's a second attempt at making tomato sauce. This one turned out even better. And I had so many watermelons, I tried making a watermelon smoothie. It wasn't quite a smoothie, so I turned it into a drink instead. And where better to drink it than out in the garden where I'd harvested the watermelon. This meal was special, had green beans from the garden, and the only potato big enough to make a baked potato with. This one's subtle. That omelet has some peppers and tomatoes from the garden. And I still had that jar of pumpkin puree. Keep watching, you'll see what I did with that. I used some of the tomatoes and the peppers from the garden to make a nice salsa as well. I wasn't sure what to do with the radishes that I'd grown the first year. I left them in the ground too long, so they were quite woody. But cooked like French fries, they tasted pretty good.
We still had a lot of apples left, so I tried making some applesauce. I ended up with a whole jar of applesauce. So I tried it with some graham crackers, and it was amazing. Even after making the applesauce, I had so many apples, so I sliced up a bunch of them to make some pies. This was my first attempt at making apple pies, but I think they turned out pretty good. I tried using some foil around the edges this time, learning the lesson from the pumpkin pies. I mixed up the apple slices with some cinnamon and brown sugar, and I even made a heart in this one. Isn't that nice? I'm not sure if it's reflection from the foil, but doesn't it look dreamy? Homemade apple pies. Sometimes they're messy, but they're always full of love. Even after making all the pies, I had a lot of apples left, so I tried making some apple pancakes. Here's the batter with the apples chopped up in there, and I think they turned out pretty good. That does look tasty. I ended up taking these as part of my morning commute to work the next few days. They were so good on the drive to work. And that apple pie was fantastic with some vanilla ice cream and some caramel on top. Yum. Still cooking up apples. This time I made some apple butter to go with it. Later I got creative and tried making something with some crescent rolls. More apple pancakes. And I finally found a use for that pumpkin puree. I made some pumpkin puree pancakes. Here's my apple crescent rolls out of the oven. I had a lot of fun cooking in the kitchen that day. Still more apples. So a few days later, I decided to make some more apple pies. There they are in the oven. I even made some apple crumble and slice up some apples ready for dipping. The next day, I decided to use the last of the apples to make some apple butter. I was able to get 8 small jars of apple butter, and it was fantastic. I was so proud of it that I traded a couple of the jars with a coworker for some homemade soaps that she had made. In December, I used the last of the pumpkin puree to make a batch of cookies to share with family. And the final thing I wanted to share with you didn't quite come from the garden, but at Christmas time, we had our first annual gingerbread house decorating contest, and my entry was my future farm. You see the cows, the pigs, the bunnies, and I won.
All right, well, thank you if you've made it this far into the video. I really appreciate you sticking around and letting me tell the story of my first year of gardening. All the ups and downs, the new skills, and just all the growth so far. I invite you to subscribe and join me on this evergreen growth journey. I'll leave a playlist here of more gardening together, just me sharing my adventures in the garden, as well as just whatever YouTube decides is the most recent and something you might enjoy watching. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.